Okay, today's topic of the podcast is why am I not getting any interviews? This is a question that I get asked a lot by the time people come to me. And there's a few reasons, possibly. I think the use of AI in your CV and your cover letter, I think it's making it much more difficult for people to rise above the noise. Because the reality is there's a lot of competition right now. So I'm seeing jobs that are getting 100 or 200 applicants. And if you can imagine, if every one of those is using AI to write their CV and their cover letter, it's difficult really to make an impact. So I say to people, you've got to network and you've got to leverage your network to get jobs. That could mean seeing a job on a job site and, reaching out to the hiring manager, doing a bit of digging and finding out who that is and asking if you can speak to them, or at least speaking to somebody within the team or within the company. But there's other ways as well. There's a long game, which is making sure that you're on LinkedIn frequently, you're interacting with posts, you're posting about topics, you're positioning yourself as a thought leader. And then there's a short term, which could be reaching out to your network to see if they need anybody, letting people know that you're available for potential roles, because you want people to think of you. You want people to be like, oh, I really need somebody. Oh, this person reached out to me. I'm going to see if they're still available. And it's just so much easier when people are reaching out to you than posting a cold application. The other thing that I see a lot on CVs, even though AI is helping people, they're not tailoring their CV for each interview. They're not updating some of the skills and things like that. And then they're not even getting in the front of a human, their CV. So it's really making sure that and you can use AI for this, you're analyzing the job description and making sure that your CV has enough of those keywords within it. And something I see a lot with agency people is Pharma's really looking for the value that you're going to bring when you come in, because they need you to hit the ground running. It's no good kind of having a CV with a load of like a shopping list of, I can do this, in my current role, I do X, Y, and Z. That's not enough. It needs to be, what was the impact that I had? And that can look like all kinds of things. It can look like I worked on a symposium and there was a 20% increase in the number of HCPs attending versus the previous year. It can look like I managed to save X amount of budget. It can look like I built a relationship. It doesn't have to be quantitative. It can be qualitative metrics as well. And the way I have it, and I think there's two options for this. You can have it where you have all of the bullet points under each role are kind of talking a combination of like what you can do and the metrics within the same sentence. Or what I actually do is I have 3 or 4 bullets on competencies within that role. And then underneath that, I then have successes. So I have 2 or 3 bullets per role of successes. And I think both of those options are valid. It's just having something that translates your value is absolutely critical for Pharma. That's what they're expecting at the bare minimum. So there's a couple of things that you can do just to increase the chances of your CV even being seen by a human. And that would be like the HR manager, possibly the hiring manager. It depends how they're doing the screening. So if you use the networking, optimizing your CV, including a cover letter that kind of speaks to your value, then let's say, fingers crossed, you get through to more interviews. Usually the first step will be an HR interview. This is really like to screening just to make sure that you do have the right competencies for the role, although the HR person won't be an expert on this particular role, of course, but they should have aligned with the hiring manager and know the types of people that they're looking for. And during that HR screening, they're really just asking you very general questions about what you used to do and what you're currently doing, rather, and your previous experience. They might be asking you about your expectations in terms of salary. They'll be asking you about things like, would you prefer to work from home or hybrid working, that kind of thing. Really just very general things. At this stage, they're just working out, is this person fitting the criteria from the hiring manager? Are their salaries aligned with the budget for this role and things like that? And then the next stage is typically the hiring manager. And this is the person who would likely be your boss. That person is the expert within that particular role, and they will have a really clear idea about not just the competencies required for the role, but the kinds of soft skills that you would need as well. So leadership, collaboration, negotiation skills, although those kinds of things, that would really be where the hiring manager would be testing you on your competencies or your willingness to learn if it's a kind of an entry-level role. And then you might have, it really depends on the company. At the moment, I'm seeing quite a few rounds of interviews. So sort of 4, even 5 or 6 rounds of interviews. And I think this is a reflection of the competitiveness of the job market right now. The next round after the hiring manager might be you meeting some cross-functional team members. So say if you're going for a role in medical, they might be wanting you to meet with somebody from commercial, somebody from the comms team, somebody from clinical. It really depends. You just meet representatives from the cross-functional team and they're just really asking, it varies. It can just be a kind of conversation just to check that you're a right kind of personality. It can be more specific. How do you collaborate? How would we work together? Those kinds of questions, really trying to understand like what some of their challenges are and what their needs are from your side. Normally the decision making comes from the hiring manager and they might really consider some of the cross-functional team members' input, but it wouldn't necessarily be a deciding kind of vote on that candidate unless they had a major issue. Normally the decision is between the hiring manager and somebody more senior who the hiring manager might report to, which leads me to the final interview, which is normally with somebody who's a VP or very senior, normally the manager of your hiring manager. And here they're typically asking you around soft skills. They're probing to understand why you want the role and what value you could bring. They're not going to be the expert on this role. They're probably not even going to have a close understanding of the requirements for the role. They're really trying to understand if you'd be a good fit for their organization and your growth possibilities. For this type of interview with the VP, it can go a number of ways. It's difficult to predict. It really depends how involved they are. But recently I have heard some people have quite probing interviews around why do you want this job and are you sure you'd be a good fit? I think they're really trying to probe as much as possible to understand the intentions behind the candidate. I think you just need to be prepared as much as possible around your value, why this company, why this role, those kinds of questions, which I think you should be prepared for anyway, and kind of leadership skills and overcoming particular hurdles and issues and how you deal with certain situations. And that in a nutshell is typically the process that's followed, and the number of steps involved really depends on the company. Personally, I think when there are more than about 6 or 7 steps, that to me is a bit of a major red flag that the hiring manager can't make decisions or isn't empowered to make decisions, and that the company is not very agile. So take that into consideration when you think about if you're ever offered the role. It can be a little bit of a sign of things to come, and if you're okay with that, that's fine, but just bear that in mind. I know it's really tough right now out there. Don't be put off if you see hundreds and hundreds of applications, because there are ways that you can rise above the noise. And I think the key is to make sure that you really just network as much as possible, building genuine connections. So make sure that you take a look at their profile and say, I saw you posting on this particular topic. It really resonated with me. You tap in a little bit to their kind of ego, but you also build a relationship that's based on something tangible and genuine. So don't just reach out and go, can I have something from you? Or can I have a recommendation? It's not going to work. So just bear that in mind, that the connections, networking should be a huge part of the job search, and don't underestimate it, especially in pharma. It's really, really critical. Make sure that you go out of your way to build as many connections as possible. Then it will be easier, I think, when you need to cash in on some of them, so to speak. I just want to say, I know it's really tough right now out there, but I'm just wishing all of you good luck. And if you need any support with your CV, your cover letter, your interviews, then just check out my website and you can book a one-to-one with me, and I'll help you to take your CV and your interviewing to the next level.